friends, welcome to Her Scars Tell a Story. I'm your host, Ann Calvillo, and today I'm with a special guest. Her name is Claudia. Welcome, Claudia.
Thank you for having me here, Anne. It's such a blessing to be here.
Thank you for coming out. I'm really excited to have you as my guest and to hear your story. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Claudia Morales. I'm also known as Carol. I was born in Mexico, raised here in Chicago in the South Side. I was brought here when I was around 5 years old. I was raised by my grandmother and my uncle. And I didn't live with my mom for many of my childhood years. As time went by, I was raised with my uncle and my grandma and my other two younger siblings. And my grandma was the best mom that I could have had. She took very good care of me. She raised me to be strong. I learned how to cook from her. And my uncle was the man that always would tell people that he was my father, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
And when I was maybe like 9 years old maybe, I was sexually molested by him. My uncle became very obsessive with me. But in our kind of family, when you're growing up, you don't tell nobody what's going on. And you just keep it to yourself. Yeah. And then when I went to my grandmother about it and my other uncle, I was told not to share with anybody, to keep it to myself. And when I was probably I want to say 12 years old, I didn't want to live there anymore. But it didn't go on. It just happened at one time. And I ended up going to live with my mom.
Yeah.
And I already had a lot of hurt because she was never there for me. And I couldn't understand why she would have apartments, but we couldn't live with her. And that would really bother me and hurt me because I had to take care of my other two siblings with my grandma at the time. And so when I was around 12, I couldn't take it with my uncle no more. He was so obsessive with me that I asked to live with my mom. And so I did. I went to go live with my mom, and I kind of became more like her babysitter. I had no discipline, no guidance, no anything. As long as I babysit for her, I didn't even have to go to school. I mean, who wouldn't love that?
Yeah.
To just stay home and, if I wash the dishes, can I stay home? Sure.
Yeah.
If I take care of the boys, can I stay home? Sure. So I was more like a babysitter and a mom to my little brothers. So the years went by. When I turned 13 years old, I started hanging around with the wrong crowd because my older brother started hanging around with them. So I followed him because me and him were very close because we grew up together. So he started hanging around with the gangbangers. So I started hanging around with them too. And my mom was never home. So we used to just let everybody in our house. The minute she would leave, our house was the hangout, the party house. And we knew that my mom wouldn't come home till 2 or 3 in the morning. So by that time, we would tell everybody to leave. So at the age of 13, I started seeing one of the guys from the neighborhood, which he was a gangbanger. And at that time, I still didn't have any kind of sexual intercourse or anything with him. But I did have a hickey on my neck. And when my mom saw that, I took a beating for that. But I also got kicked out. So I took a beating from that. And I was called every name in the book. And I was like, I didn't do anything with him. She told me she didn't care, that I was a disgrace to the family and that she didn't want me there. So she threw me out of the house. And I don't even think I was in love with him. We were just messing around, We used to hang around with all the guys, and it was fun. Just hanging out, staying up all night, So I ended up going to live with him. And when my mom would drink, she would go over there with the cops and get me back home. But when she was sober, she didn't want me around. She would just call me out my name and throw me back out. So at the age of 14, I ended up getting pregnant. I had no idea what was going on with me when I got pregnant. I ended up having a little boy. I had to figure it out on my own how to raise him. I do remember being in the labor room. And of course, the father wasn't there because he was with his friends. And I remember my uncle being there. And my grandmother being in the labor room with me. And I delivered my son. And my uncle was still very obsessive over me. He used to, spy on me, follow me, tell me to go back home. And I wouldn't. So after I had my son, I went back to live with my mom for a little while. Then a couple years later, maybe 2 years later, I stopped being with the father of my son, and I started seeing my childhood friend, who was really, really good to me. But he was from the opposite gang. So when my son's father found out, him and his friends, they beat him up really bad. They stabbed him in my arms, maybe 15, 17 times in his stomach. And I was told not to say nothing. So I had to leave to Mexico because I was being threatened. So I ended up leaving to Mexico with my son. And I was over there for about a year. And then I came back just to go back to my son's father. And back to that kind of life that I didn't want to go back to. I ended up getting pregnant again with my second daughter. And then by then, I didn't want to live that life anymore. So one of my friends, her mom, gave me the opportunity to live with them. She opened her door throughout my pregnancy and let me stay with them, which I'm always so grateful for them. They were a blessing to my life for allowing me and giving me a roof over my head, for providing for all the things that my baby needed when I had her and when I got home. After staying there for a while, my children's father wanted me to go back, but I didn't. And I remember one day he came over, and at this time my mom was living in the house where I was staying because she didn't have nowhere to stay. And she was staying there with my brothers and my sisters and everybody. He had told me that he wanted me back, and I told him no, that I didn't want to live with him. At this time, I had already moved with my other friend because my other friend had told me I could stay with her. But my kids were still staying with my mom there at my other girlfriend's house. I said I didn't want to be with him. So he turned around and punched me in the face and gave me a black eye. And that was the day I was like, I don't deserve this. This is not what I want for my life. And I called the cops on him. Yeah. And you would think that my mom would grab me and be like, man, look at your face. No. She started slapping me, telling me, why would I call the cops on him? I ran outside and I went to the cops and I told the cops, I want to press charges. I don't want to be with him. And he got handcuffed. And my mom was like, tell them to let him go. Tell them to let him go. And I was like, no. She started hitting me. I told the cops, Please get her away from me. You know, I don't want to be around her. So they had another squad car escort me out of there. And I lost a lot of respect for my mom. I grew to have a lot of resentment. I actually hated my mom. I stood away from her for a very long time. And then I met my husband, Rick. And I would tell him, don't come around. Please don't come by me. I don't want you around me. Because I didn't want him to get hurt. I didn't want him to go through what my childhood friend went through. Yeah. And he still kept coming around, you know. So the minute my mom found out that I was with somebody else, she sent my sisters to go take me my kids and call me every name in the book, and that I was everything else but her daughter, you know. Yeah. So I ended up staying with my friend, and then something happened in my friend's house that I had to leave, and I went back to my mom's house. And then I told her that I had a boyfriend. She didn't like my husband at all. He would come over, and from the north, all the way to 87th and Commercial, and he would come over, and she would tell him he can't stay here. He would have to go on the bus in the blizzard. She wouldn't care. But with anybody else, they're welcome to stay over, you know. She made it really, really hard on me. Until one day, he told me, one day I'm going to come with a moving truck, and I'm going to take you and your kids with me. We're going to get our own place. And I was like, yeah, right. That's not going to happen to me. You know, those things are only in, like, movies.
Yeah.
So I remember one day, somebody beeping in front, and we live, like, in the main street. So I looked out the window, and sure enough, it was my husband and his friends with a pickup truck. And they came to pick me and my kids up. And my mom was like, where are you going? And I said, I'm leaving. I'm moving out. She's like, no, you're not. I said, yes, I am. You know, so I ended up leaving with my husband. We went to a little basement apartment in the north side. And I didn't talk to my mom for a couple of years. Then I started going around her again. But I had a lot of hate and resentment towards her. And, you know, I remember, like, when she told me that she was diagnosed with cancer. And I could remember that, like, so well. We were in the back of her yard, and my mom used to sell, like, elotes and gifts and flowers and all that stuff. And honestly, I didn't even know what cancer was. And I was like, oh, okay. And then she told me, forgive me for everything that I ever did to you. She said, I'm so, so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. And at that time, I knew how to hold my tears because I knew to be tough. You don't cry. I always had a tough attitude. You know, a lot more went on in my life, but part of it, I was taught to be tough. You don't cry. You don't show emotions. So I was like, oh, okay, I forgive you. But I didn't really mean it because I didn't really care. Her forgiveness meant really nothing to me. But I could remember it. And I think about it a lot. And then, but you know, years went by, and then me and Rick bought a house and everything. And then she's fighting cancer. And one day she calls me from the hospital, and she's like, can you pick me up? And I was like, I got to work, you know. She's like, okay. But I'm like, I'll pick you up. And I remember having an attitude. I didn't really want to pick her up. I didn't want to sit with her at the hospital. You know, I didn't want to do nothing for her. Why should I? Like, she didn't do it for me. Why should I do it for her? But at that time, I was already starting to have God in my life because of my sister-in-law. She was always talking to us about going to church and about God, and you know. But I knew all along God had put me aside because of the way growing up with my mom. She was a Catholic. She she believed in the Virgin Mary, and she had nothing but saints all over her house. And whenever she would tell me, like, oh, here, take this virgin and put it in your house, I would take it and be like, oh, thank you. But when I would leave, I'll be like, I don't want this in my house. I would throw it in the garbage, you know. I never believed in everything that she believed. And I know that because God already had me on the side. He had put me aside because he knew what my life was going to be about. He knew what direction he was going to take me, you know. And now when I think back, it was all God. You know, when I lived with my friend, here, we grew up with a whole bunch of lies. Here I am, 16 years old, homeless, with 2 kids. I didn't have a job. I was an immigrant. I couldn't get food stamps. I couldn't get a medical card. How did I survive? How did I provide for my children? I have no idea. It had to be God. And I think about this all the time because, you know what? I could never, ever turn my back on God because he always had my back. Until this day, he still has my back. So after my mom got really, really sick, she asked me one day to pick her up from the hospital and to bring her to my house. I was like, bring it to my house? I didn't want to bring her to my house. Why would I want to bring her to my house? And then, sure enough, I ended up bringing her to my house. And I told my daughter, you're going to go sleep with your other sister and she'll share bunk beds with the other. We put the bunk beds down. She ended up staying there for 6 months. I remember her telling me if I could play some of that music, that God music, that I would pray, and so she can feel peace. So I would put worship music on for her really softly. Then she would ask me, can you tell your husband to read the Bible to me? And I used to be like, why? You know, like all these things she's asking of me. Why? Why do I have to do this? I didn't want to. Yeah. But now I understand why. Because it was all God. You know, and throughout the years, you know, through this time that she was sick, she lived with me for 6 months before she passed away. And I took care of her. I still didn't understand why. I was still holding a lot of resentment and a lot of hurt and a lot of anger. But if I knew what I know now, things would have been so different. If I would have had God in my life the way I have him now, I would have made every moment with her different. But I think about her, and God has revealed so much to me. Like, she was a woman that was hurting. She was a woman that did everything she was supposed to do. She got married. She had a husband. But her husband became unfaithful to her. She broke down. Her family turned her back on her. Her parents. She felt like she had nobody. And she turned to men. And she felt that that's where she would get her love. But God showed me a strong woman that tried her best. A single mom of 6 of us who wanted nothing but the best for us. She always tries so hard to have a house. She always tries so hard to have her little store. I remember with being a little girl, I remember my mom was a very smart woman. My mom was a nurse. I remember seeing her in her nurse uniform, and she had to take us with her to work sometimes. You know, and when you're angry, you don't see all that beauty. You see all your hurt. You don't want to see nothing else of her. But God showed me all the beauty in my mom, all the struggles that she went through, all the pain that she suffered from the same man that molested me, molested her. You know, and now God has shown me like the beauty in my mom. And I wish that she was here today because I would take good care of her. many of times she would call me and say, "Oh, mija, ven a comer, te hice de comer." And I used to roll my eyes and be like, "I don't want to eat with you. You know how much I miss that?" I wish that she can call me right now and tell me to come over and eat. You know? She tried, but I was hurt. And I rejected her just as much as she rejected me. But God really showed me her pain, her hurt. And I wish that she was here today so I could embrace her and tell her how much God loves her and how he could have taken away her pain and she wasn't alone. And I wish that I would have saw her this way before she died. But now I understand why God gave me 6 years of her life with me, because he wanted me to take care of her and to show her the love of God and be gentle to her and love on her like no one ever did.
Claudia, thank you for sharing just your whole story, your scars, and everything that you've been through with your mom. I know that many of us women, we have issues. We have our own scars from broken relationships with our mothers. I know I do, and I can relate to you. I can relate to you, and my mom is still alive. And what you're sharing is really speaking to my heart right now. And I know some of us, we really needed to hear what you had to say, because some of us still have time.
Yes.
Some of us still have time to make up for lost time with our mothers, especially as they're aging. I see my mom aging, and she's not physically as strong as she once was, you know. But I thank you for sharing that, because it sheds light on the time that we have, and that we should make the most of the time that we have with them.
Yes.
Even times when maybe they're not receptive of our love, but it's understanding that they come from a place of hurt and brokenness too, which is why it's hard for them to show it and receive it. And so I really thank you for really sharing that and shedding light on that. As you were talking, was listening to how your husband Rick was there, and when your mom was there at your home, was he supportive of you having your mom, and was he supportive of everything?
Oh yes. Yes. By that time, she loved Rick. She
Yeah.
loved Rick very much. She would always thank him for taking care of me. Yes.
Yeah. And like you said, it was like a movie, and I can picture that as you said, he came up in the pickup truck. I just see God all throughout your story. I just see God when your babies were little. I see God when you were homeless, all these, although you didn't have that encounter that we talked about, right? Like, you didn't have that encounter, but he was there.
He was definitely there. Because I even asked myself now, even till today, I'm like, man, how did I buy diapers? How did I feed my kids? How did I have clothes on me? God always puts someone in my path to help me along the way, to get through, to move forward. I mean, I could never turn my back on God. Never.
Yeah.
He's been so good to me.
Yeah, it's evident. It's evident in your life, Claudia. I know that you also had mentioned having to go through the abuse you went through. How did you find healing in all of that for our listeners that may have dealt with that type of abuse, sexual abuse at a young age? How did you find healing from that?
Through God. All through God. Because before I started going to church, I was broken. I used to wake up mad, swearing, upset. because I still felt that everything was still going wrong in my life. There was a time where me and my husband were not doing so well, and he cheated on me. And I was tired of arguing and fighting with him because I had told him from the beginning, I'm that kind of person where there's not going to ever be a breakup to make up. For me, if we're going to break up, it's going to be for good. And then when he cheated on me, I just felt like, again, like, man, I had to deal with this with the father of my children over and over with my friends. And like, man, this is not happening to me again. And there was a day that I was driving and I'm like, man, I don't want to live anymore. Here I go again, you know? Mm-hmm. And I told him, you know what? There's a church over here on Archer. Mm-hmm. I said, I want to go to that church. And yeah, we ended up going to New Life Medway. And we were in the car arguing for about a half an hour. And it's God, because we're arguing. And I told him, you know what? I want to go in there because that last Sunday they said today they were going to start taking volunteers to help in the Easter performance that they were going to have. Yeah. And I told him, I want to help. I want to do something different. I don't want to live this life anymore. And I'm like, I'm going in. So he stood in the car and I went in. And first person I go to is Velma. And I said, hi, I was here to volunteer. And she goes, okay, what group are you in? And I'm like, group. I'm like, I'm not in no group. I go, I don't go to group. I just started coming here. She goes, well, usually our volunteers are the ones that, you know, are in groups, our church. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, I don't know what's a group. I've never been to a group, but I'll go to a group. Mm-hmm. And she was like, as I was talking to her, my husband walks in and he stands next to me. And then she goes, oh, he's going to volunteer too? Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, and he goes, yeah. So she was like, okay, give me 1 second, okay? And I'll be right back. And she walked away and came back and she's like, okay, go over there with the other group, the other people over there, but you got to promise me that you're going to get in a group. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So we went and we got in line and we ended up being in helping, and that's where I met Christina Flores. Yeah. And then I met Jesse and Robert through my husband. Robert introduced himself to my husband, and we met them. And with them, we started going to Juan and Rosa's house for Fusion. Okay. So that's how we got connected.
Fusion, the marriage ministry.
Marriage ministry, yeah. So that's the group we signed up for.
Wow. Yes. Wow, look at God. Look at God. Yes. Wow. So you're driving, you're like, let's go into the church. You get there, Velma connects you, and you end up in a marriage ministry group, and it's Juan and Rosa.
Yes, in their home.
Wow.
And Jesse and Robert Roman are the ones that took us to their home. Wow. And that's how we started going to Fusion.
And when did you surrender your life to the Lord?
So we were going to church here and there at that time. Yeah. But I felt like something was missing. And years back, we had went to a Christian church called Mercy Ministries in the north side with my sister-in-law. Mm-hmm. And she had invited us to a picnic they were having in Wisconsin. So we're like, yeah, we'll go to the picnic. Yeah. Because my sister, I used to be like, oh, here she comes. You know? Oh, my sister-in-law, Lulu. Yeah. All she knows how to do is talk about God. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And so we went. And I'm not going to lie. We just went to go. But it so happens that my daughter, Misty, at that time, and her friend, Monica, wanted to go too. But they had a little hangover.
Uh-huh.
So we ended up going.
Uh-huh.
So everybody was getting baptized, you know,
On that day?
on that day.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and my mom went with us that day too.
Wow.
Because we're like, "Ay, es un picnic, vamos."
Everybody
goes.
Vámonos.
So we ended up all getting baptized.
What?
But I didn't even know
Yeah.
what we were doing.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was about God.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's getting baptized. We'll get
Vámonos.
baptized.
Yeah.
So my daughter, Missy, her friend, I got baptized. Rick didn't. And we were just like, okay, we got baptized.
Yeah.
But then we just kept living our lives like normal. Like, I was still going out. And,
Yeah.
you know, because throughout my life, I was a bartender and all this and that.
Yeah.
So I used to like going to clubs a lot and
Yeah.
hanging out with the girls. But it was more for dancing.
Mm-hmm.
But, so yeah, when we moved to Kennedy High School,
Uh-huh.
Garfield
Ridge. Yeah. Uh-huh.
with Juana Rosa,
Yeah.
I did the book with Rosa.
Hmm.
And I got baptized again as a reconciliation with the Lord.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's when
Hmm.
I became faithful to my God.
Yeah.
That's when I just felt like his presence, his Holy Spirit.
Hmm.
And that's when I felt like I belong to you, God,
Yes.
and no one else.
Yes.
And I know that my life couldn't have been any better than how you have been taking care of me.
Hmm.
I could have easily fallen into drugs. I could have stood living the life.
Yeah.
Because I used to hang around with game bangers.
Yeah.
I grew up with them. I liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's all you know.
That's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. I liked hanging around. I liked staying up all night,
Yeah.
hanging in the hood.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun back then,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And hey, the father of my kids,
Mm-hmm.
he was a game banger.
Mm.
He was down for his nation.
Yeah.
So he was up here.
Yeah.
So I'm there, you know, that's my man, you know.
Yeah. You felt protected. You felt like he's got me. He's going to take care of me. Yeah.
He was not the kind that will back down on a fight.
Yeah.
He was always down for his.
Yeah.
So, you know, I felt like, hey, this is the life.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
No.
Because I never liked it.
Yeah.
When I really, really think about it,
Yeah.
and after I had my daughter, I was like, this is not for my kids.
Right. Right.
I have to change for them
Yeah.
and get them out of this.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want the same.
Right.
Even though my younger siblings followed and ended up being in that kind of life, it was not for my kids.
Hmm. So you made some tough choices. You had to
Very
make
tough
some tough choices. Yeah.
I could have been selfish and thought of myself. But when you have kids, you can't do that.
No.
You have to think for them,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And just hearing what you're saying, talking about the way of life that you grow accustomed to and you think this is the normal, like this, this is normal for me. And for many of us, it is our normal. It is what we call the hood life is the normal life, and it's really not until the Lord shines his light and he shows us there's more to life than that. There's more to life than what you're living through right now in this present moment. There's more to it. You need me. Come to me. And I can relate, Claudia, that it was that come to me moment in my life too that changed the course of my life. And it started with me. He started with me, right? And so then, you said you went to church, you and Rick got plugged in, you started going to Fusion. How did that affect your marriage?
It took us to a good place.
God.
It took us to a good place.
Yeah.
A place where we understood each other more.
Yeah.
We were both going to church, and there was a time where he was leading with Brother Robert. And I take the blame for it because we had a big fight. And I said something I should have never said to him. And I know that now, words are powerful.
Yeah.
And you have to be very careful what you say before you say it, because you cannot take them back.
Yeah.
And I said something to him that I regret, but I apologized many of times, and I think he stepped back because of that. But for a good amount of time, we were doing really, really, really good.
Yeah.
And right now, we're not in the best place.
Mm-hmm.
My husband hasn't been going to church, but I know that God is still working in us.
Yes.
And I know that he has the final answer.
Yes.
I know that everything is in his control, not mine or Rick's,
Yes.
So we just I lay it all before him, and I trust in him that he's going to do what he has to do in my life. I know that I can put my full trust in him, and everything is going to work together for my good through him.
Yes. Yes. Claudia, I ask all my guests, what words of advice, what words of encouragement would you have to a listener who may have troubles maybe forgiving their mother, maybe holding on to resentment, maybe unable to let go of the past hurts from their childhood? What words of advice or encouragement would you have for that listener?
My words of encouragement is, if your mom is still alive, make things right. No matter what you've been through, no matter how much she hurt you, no matter what she's done to you, forgive her. For you don't know the pain she has endured throughout her life. I know it's easier said than done. Forgiveness is such a hard thing, but it's so important to set yourself free from the pain that you're carrying on. And if your mom is still alive, love her. Show her the love of God, the same love and embrace that he gives you every time when you come before him. Show her that love. Spend a lot of time with her. Make memories. Make memories. Don't be like me. I wish my mom would call me right now and say, te estoy esperando, te hice de desayunar. Because I don't get those invitations anymore. So if you can still get those invitations, take them. Make the best of them. Even if you don't want to, make the best of them.
And for those who maybe their mom has passed away, but they're still struggling to release their mother and that hurt, what would you say to them?
I would say pray and ask God to reveal, like he revealed to me. I see my mom now in such a different way. I know that back then I didn't see her that way because I was hurting. But now I see her pain, her hurt, her strength, and what she wanted for her kids is she just wanted to give her kids a home. She wanted to give her kids everything that she didn't have. And I know that my mom was a beautiful person. I know that my mom was an amazing cook. I knew my mom knew crafts. You name it. My mom knew how to tejer. My mom knew how to do arts and crafts. My mom liked to decorate. My mom liked to paint. My mom liked to read. My mom liked to write, Yeah. And all those things that I didn't ever consider of her, little by little, God will reveal these things. And I used to be like, oh, yeah, my mom used to always be reading. Oh, yeah, my mom used to make this. And my mom used to make that. But she loved to cook. And she was a great cook. And I think that's where me and my daughters get it from.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You and your girls.
And I still have her pots and pans. I kept them, and that's what I cook in now.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
I have her cucharas and all her pans.
All her pans, yeah. Oh, Claudia, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Claudia, for sharing your story. I know This was not easy for you. I know that, as you had mentioned, you were just being obedient to the Lord, and that you said to me, Anne, if my story can help someone, one person, then I want to share my story. And thank you for that, Claudia. I pray that your story reaches many hearts. I pray that many women who are struggling with unforgiveness and hurt and pain with their moms, I pray that they would just see the Lord working in your life and be encouraged through that, and make some choices, right? Some tough choices, right? But I thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Anne, for having me. I am privileged to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it is my honor, Claudia. It is my honor to get your story out there so that people can see the Lord in your story and be encouraged through it. Thank you all for listening to this podcast. I pray that you tune in to Her Scars Tell a Story.